Alrighty. We're ready to get started. Pursuant to Section 841412 of Nebraska statutes, the public is hereby informed that a current copy of Nebraska Open Meetings Act is with the Secretary to the Board of Education. The Board of Education, the Superintendent will review the principles of effective board governance, including but not limited to identification of district values, key work of school boards, review of board norms, and drafting of board goals. Mr. Ray, roll call, please.
Cassidy.
Here.
Goding. Hallman.
Here.
Cracky.
Here.
Perlman.
Here.
Ryan. Smith. Snipe.
Present.
Snow.
Here.
7 present.
Mrs. Godin informed us that she wouldn't be able to attend tonight's meeting. I would entertain a motion to
6 present. 6
So
present,
moved.
sorry.
6 present. Okay.
Yep. I saw that Amanda Ryan name tag tonight.
Ricky and Amanda have arrived. At the time is it?
Thank you.
5:41.
And Amanda.
8 present. You're good. All right. This will be a working retreat. Mrs. Godin informed us that she wasn't going to be able to attend tonight. I will entertain a motion to excuse her from tonight's meeting retreat.
So moved.
There's a motion on the floor by Ms. Snipe, second by Mr. Perlman. Roll call, please.
Hallman.
Aye.
Cracky.
Aye.
Perlman.
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Snipe. Snow.
Aye.
Aye.
Cassidy.
Aye.
8 aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. We have one item on tonight's agenda. It is board governance, and I believe we're going to start it off with our superintendent. Is that correct? Or our superintendent, Dr. Cheryl Logan.
Thank you, President Snow. My first order of business is to welcome our facilitator, Dr. Martha Bruckner, who is the Executive Director of the Metropolitan Omaha Consortium of Schools, and better known as MOAC. And we are really thrilled to have her. For the record, she is also the retired superintendent of Council Bluffs, Iowa, and has a long history here in Nebraska, to include being a school board member in Ralston. So she brings a lot of expertise and also has conducted 2 previous retreats for this Board of Education. So we're really thrilled to have her, and we are going to first do an activity, and then we'll be turning it over to Dr. Bruckner. The activity that we're going to do, Dr. Holman and I were going to do this, tag team this. She has a little laryngitis, so I agreed to do it. But what I want to do now is to kind of go over something that we did together in July. And it was not just Dr. Holman and I. There were a team of 8 folks, and we were invited to what's called the Public Education Leadership Project, which is held at the Harvard Business School every summer. We received a grant to go for our participation in the program and for our travel. We took with us 3 of our labor partners. We took Dan Heck, who is the president of the Administrators Association. We took Bobby Miller, who is the head president of the Omaha Education Association. And we also took Steve Owens, who is the president of Service Employees International Union as well. as Mr. Ray, our Chief of Staff, and Mr. Wakefield, our Chief of Human Resources, and Monique Farmer, our former Executive Director of Communications and parent. As you know, Mrs. Farmer is going to continue to support the district through a grant to support us with special projects in communications. We're very excited about her doing that, and we were thrilled with everybody that we had there. It was 6 days of work, and it's not a conference, so you don't get to choose sessions. You go, it's not like that. You go from beginning to end to everything to include several cases. So we worked through a lot of cases. Some of the cases were from education. A couple were from nonprofit, but several were from for-profit businesses. We will go for 3 years, so we will go next summer, and then we'll go the summer after that to continue work on our problem of practice and potentially identify some new areas around our problem of practice. But I'm going to kind of go over that. What our problem of practice was, it took us 3 days to develop our problem of practice, which is typical because they want to have you start with one thing and kind of drill down into what it is. So we had a very skilled facilitator. Her name was Dia Bryant, she works for the New York Department of Ed and is working towards her doctorate. So they basically have doctoral students, and then they have business professors from Harvard who conduct the PELP, which that's the acronym for it. And many of these people have worked in some of the largest multinational companies and are very dedicated to working in the education sector to solve some of the most wicked problems. And we were paired with 2 other districts. We were paired with Rochester schools, and we were paired with, Colorado Springs, District 16. Was it District 16 or District 11? Colorado Springs has 16 school districts, so it was 11. So it was kind of interesting to go. Each one, they had their superintendent. Rochester actually has a superintendent who had been in office 4 days or 3 days when this started. So we're going to start talking about our problem of practice. We had pre-identified a problem of practice, which was around organizational culture, and I'm going to give that to you, and then we're going to work through an activity where we really need the board's input as we work through this problem of practice. Yes, absolutely. I was so looking forward to Dr. Holman leading this so joyfully. That's okay. I'm just giving you a hard time. So the problem of practice that we identified initially was really kind of generally about organizational culture and not feeling like as an organization we are where we want to be in terms of culture. So after 3 days, 4 almost, it was Wednesday afternoon that we got to our final problem of practice. We got to this one, and I'll read it because people at home can't, or whoever decides to listen to this, won't be able to see it. The district does not have an established set of organizational values, norms, and attitudes that unite all constituents to prepare all students for post-secondary success. Where a child attends schools within the Omaha Public Schools determines the quality of their overall school experience, including but not limited to instructional quality, leadership quality, teacher-staff quality, conditions of facilities, and overall access to resources and educational opportunities. As a result, students and families have inconsistent experiences with Omaha Public Schools. And we all know that, I believe that the one value of this board is they want all students to have excellent not only access to excellent opportunities, but really experience the district in the best way. And so we kind of went through this other activity where we identified root causes called fishbone. And so basically we had big bones on the fish, and those were the big rocks, and we had to keep drilling down. And we had to keep saying why, and then we would do the next one, then why, and then why, and then why, and then until we kind of exhausted it. I think we had about 5 or 6 for each one. And we did this around the room in sets of 2, and then kind of went around and gave feedback. And so we kind of identified some of the root causes around this. And it was not easy because we had, people representing different constituencies, and there were some very difficult conversations that were had, some uncomfortable. But by the end of the week, we were one big happy family. We actually live the way they have you live is in a pod together. Everybody has their own room. They're like hotel rooms, and they're very nice. But then you have this shared space where you have a living space and a television monitor. I don't think we ever watched any TV, but there was a monitor. And then on the other side, there was another monitor, but then a conference table. And then in the middle, they had a full kitchen. And, I'm not going to lie, it was Harvard. And, everything was really swanky. It was kind of really nice. They always had snacks all day long. It was like one of those weeks where you could easily gain 5 pounds just eating all the snacks. And they treated us very, very nicely. But we worked every day from 8 a.m. until 8 or 9 p.m. And there was, I think, 1 or 2 days where we kind of finished about 7 o'clock. So these were the root causes that we identified: a lack of organizational pride, sometimes folks having a not my job culture, and some stakeholders not feeling valued, a lack of ownership and accountability, a lack of trust, sometimes an us versus them culture, some inconsistent messages and a perception of not having follow-through, some concerns with consistency of quality of staff at all levels. It didn't matter whether it was what position the person held. So we have some staff members super standing out, and others, as families experience it, not where families would like it to be. And then some inconsistent equity opportunities and experience for students. So those are some pretty deep things, as you can see. So you can probably discern that we had some pretty significant conversations. And remember, we had our folks representing all of our major employee groups, and I'd like to give a super special shout out to Mr. Owens, because bringing the voice of the facilities and maintenance workers was really very important to how they experience the school district and how they experience leadership sometimes, and then some of their own observations about employees in their own bargaining unit. And I will say, too, that it was very much noted it's very unusual to bring labor partners to this because they typically won't come. So it was just a big deal. The fact that that they wanted to come was a great thing. And I will say that another thing we discovered is we're doing a lot of great things. Sometimes you need to compare yourself to folks around the country, and you go, "Woo, glad we're not them." And so that was also really good. But one of the things that as we do our start our work on our strategic plan is a strategic plan needs to have a very solid foundation, and that sound foundation is values and and norms that are the manifestation of those values. And one of the things that we talked about was, and one of our experts told us, I think it was Dr. Kim, said, "Oh, you have norms." They just are all kind of all over the place, and they're probably not exactly what you want them to be because they're not necessarily based on a shared value. So how do you go about creating those for a district? And one of the ways that we have started to do this is first as a PELP team. We call ourselves a PELP team. We got back together and we started looking at some values around the country. We took some school districts from around the country that and Mr. Ray was gracious enough to kind of mine some around the country and put those together. And then we kind of did this activity that we're getting ready to do right now, where we kind of read over them and kind of just decided which ones do we as a group think represent who we are. And then Mr. Miller did that with the OEA board. And Mr. Owens is doing that with his team. And Dr. Heck is doing that with the principal team. And we're doing it with some fifth graders and then also with some kindergartners. And we will do it with some central office staff. We have a town hall tomorrow, and we'll do it with some central office staff. And obviously, we definitely need to do it with the board. So the next thing that we're going to do is to kind of look through some values. We have some samples from different school districts around the country. So I want you to take a few minutes to read over those. And then you're going to get some Post-it notes. And what I'd like you to do on the Post-it notes is write down the 5 values that most resonate with you. Now, as you're doing that, one of the things that we found really helpful, thanks to Dr. Holman, was to say, hey, let's put up our problem of practice and our root causes. Because when you look at your values, how do they relate to some of the root causes for why we have this problem of practice, and how do they reflect also the problem of practice? So you have those there as a guide, and then we put the definition of values for you, because we found that really helpful during that week. And once you that'll take you a few minutes. Then we're going to put them up here in clusters. And then we'll take that back to the total group for our PELP team, and then present some for consideration by the Board of Education.
When you say, I forgot the letters in the acronym, PELP,
PELP, Public Education Leadership Project.
so this will be brought back to those.
To the PELP team. Our PELP, our
an
PELP
intern,
team,
okay.
the 8 people from OPS who went. And then we do, one of the things that we do have an opportunity to do, though, Mr. Perlman, is we have 2 sessions that we'll have. There'll be Zoom sessions that we'll do with our leader there. She continues, and she's still a resource to us. But, I mean, really, it's, like I told somebody, it's kind of like therapy. You really kind of go about solving your own issues. They just provide you a nice framework to kind of do so.
And sorry to keep asking these. I feel like some of these questions are probably asked better now than later. So, values, is it for the district, for our board, or a combination, or?
Oops. We're one entity, although we have 2 parts,
Right.
so it would be for all of us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Thanks.
When you write down your value, if you can write down what district you found it from, that'll be helpful. That way, it kind of helps us to go back and look at them.
You're just nervous.
Dr. Logan, I have a question.
Sure.
So, are these ones that we like, that what we see, or
And if you see something, if you want to write something that you don't see, then you should write it. If you have a value, kind of feel like there's probably not anything missing, because this is pretty exhaustive, but there could be something. And like in some, and if you look at some of the values, like one district might write it as equity, and one district writes it as diversity. So one of those may resonate with you more than the other.
got a mark.
Do you want us to like if Mark and I both picked? If we both picked excellence, then
Let me take this out. Just, I'm not going to. Yes.
Correct, but they're different times. The 10th and the 8th, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., and 12:30 to 4. September 10th to October.
No. Have nothing. I'm working on it. That one's done. Siobhan, I ran out of a sticky, so.
Does anybody know what this says? Fulfill task accepted. Who wrote that? Okay. Okay, that's all right.
But there were undertones into that. does that say? Hey, what does that say? We do something for everyone here.
Okay, I'm on here. Okay. So we're just a little bit, I'm just talking to the mic only because it's being recorded. We're a little bit more divergent than the other groups have been, but I don't really know. I mean, just from our PELP team, we were, but that probably was a lot because we spent 6 days together. So when we did this activity, it was like 2 weeks or 3 weeks after we had come back, but we still were really super tight, which was kind of interesting. A lot over here in results matter, continuous improvement, and student achievement, and expectations matter. Responsibility, which we put close to responsibility, which we're trying to put down here next to leadership. Innovation came up twice. Equity came up 3 times. And inclusive, actually 4, if you include inclusive culture. I think those are similar. Respect is kind of an outlier, but I think respect can also be kind of grouped with trust a little bit. And I'm going to put relationships matter over here closer to trust, because I think that those are similar, maybe. We had a 2 for joy, 3, including Mrs. Kratke. Communication was an outlier. Compassion, I think we could stick over here in this one, close to relationships, and character as well. So we're not that divergent because we have a lot over here. Excellence comes up quite a bit, and we've kind of grouped perseverance around that. Trust and respect and relationships mattering. And then, so what we'll do is we'll put all of this together, and we'll send this to the PELP team with the frequency at which they showed up as well. And then, Mrs. Kratke she just likes all of St. Paul's. So she felt that they were concise and very well stated. So we'll make sure to include that as well. So I'm going to, any questions about this activity? So you know what happens next? It goes to the PELP team. It's a part of the feedback from you all, from teachers, from everyone, and then it'll come to the board for consideration as the foundation for our strategic planning, because we want our strategic planners to plan based on what we value, even if we are planning for the future. So I'm about to turn it over to Dr. Bruckner, but I just think we need to get a little looser because we got a little bit more time together. So I have a little quick activity, just we're going to go around, and you're going to give us your DJ name, okay? And your DJ name is you can start with either Grandmaster, Lil, or Young, and it has to be the last thing you ate, right? So mine, I'm going to go use Grandmaster. I'm Grandmaster Waldorf salad. See? Isn't that hilarious? Come on now. We got to loosen you up somehow. So, Mrs. Ryan, you're first. Miss Ryan, you're first. So you either can be Grandmaster, Little, or Young. And you can be... Okay, well, which one are you?
I'm going to be... no. I think I'm going to be Lil Chicken Chipotle.
I chose Lil Italian.
Young Zesty.
Oh, right.
We'll just go with Young Chili.
Since I'm only 5 foot, I gotta go with Lil. I'll say Lil Cookie.
Lil Cookie.
DJ Turkey Avocado. DJ?
Grandmaster.
Who else is doing? What's the other one? I'll do Little Turkey Avocado. Yeah. Avocado. I'm a really good beatboxer.
I'll beatbox. I'll be Grandmaster Pickle. Grandmaster Pickle.
Grandmaster Chips.
Oh, a little turkey. We had a little turkey.
Could you say it into the mic, please?
Little turkey sandwich.
All right.
Now I'll turn it over to Dr. Bruckner. Because I wanted her to see your joyful side, and we just needed to relax a little bit after a long day of work and a serious activity. So thank you, and I'm done for the night. I'm just going to be here helping.
Thank you very much. Am I on? I'm on? I'm just not close enough. Now I am. So I'm very glad that Matt is Little Turkey Sandwich instead of Little Turkey, because I was afraid you were going to quit there. You added the sandwich, okay. I'm Little Tomato Bisque. It's not going to sell, I realize. I am very privileged to be with you tonight to just spend a little bit of time. When I walked in, Mr. Snow says, I hear you're going to just read us the Riot Act, etc. I am not here in any shape, way, or form to read anybody the Riot Act. My goal is to have you talk to each other, reflect a little bit about what you've done in the last year, celebrate some good things, and just think about, as you start working towards that strategic plan, what might be some goals. So I've asked Matt to get ready to show a video, and I want you to just watch it. I'm going to explain a little bit about it first. It's about 3.5 minutes. It's not real high quality because it was made before high quality opportunities to video existed. But your job as you watch this, and you've each got a notepad here, is to jot down how does what happened in this video translate to what you do as the Board of Education in Omaha Public Schools. Any connections you can make between what they're doing and what you're doing. What do you learn from this that can help you be as good a team as you're going to see here? So, and they're going to be able to see this. Okay. I hope you enjoy it. It's kind of fun. See, everybody wants to watch this video. You're going to love it.
It was Herman Osgood's idea. His mark needed moving to higher ground anyway, and he thought this would be a grand way to celebrate Bruno, Nebraska's centennial. Some had no doubt that with a hearty heave-ho, the barn would go.
Think you're strong enough to lift? Yes, I can lift 90 pounds.
But others weren't so sure.
I hope so. I think so. To pull off a project like this, you need a lot of muscle, a little help from above. Nebraska was born in 1928, and it's formed by the Herman Osgood family. So it looks like we're going to give our musical, and we're going to thank the Lord for the beautiful day that we are all hoping for. We hope that we can accomplish what we're set out to do here today. We hope to make some history. So everyone out there, grab home, everyone ready, and see how the hands are down, and see right through the barn. You're going to all see it as the Lord and generally there. Now very slowly, very steadily come forward. Very slowly, very steadily. Just beautiful. Just to show the world how we can work together. Just as courteous to be. So does anybody feel that we need some certain length of time? Good. It's going great. Slowly, steadily lift again. Straight up. There you go. Beautiful. Keep up again. Let's go slowly and steadily forward. Now, real slow, real steadily. Move forward. Beautiful. Keep these small steps. Go real slowly. Just hurry up the speed. Careful of your heel. Careful of your pedal. Don't let. You're doing a great job. Okay, slowly, steadily lift again. Okay, well, slowly, steadily going in. Right, stretch water. Steadily, steadily, keep coming. Just real slow, real steady. Keep it coming. Keep on going. Okay, well, keep right on going. Going to the great job. That's great. You guys are doing just the most beautiful job anyone could ever see. Slow down, we're going to stop. Stop there. We're going to stop right. Just a hair more. Forward. Watch your heels. Stop. It's great. Now the women carriers, they're doing a fantastic job. It's a beautiful job. Slowly lower. There you go. We're going to have a little bit off the ground because the water run under there yet. You ever seen a barn move like this before? Is it happy? Oh, I got
So, tell me, what are some comparisons between what they did in moving the barn and in what you do as serving in the Board of Education for Omaha Public Schools?
Heavy load.
True. Use your mic, please.
Heavy load and moving forward and training the staff as they were doing some training. But it was interesting again that we differed because I counted very few females because I figured they had to be assigned to the kitchen to do the cooking in the hot weather for all the people out there.
Good observations, all of them. Thank you. What else, Ms. Snipe?
I would say that just looking at it, I saw the trust and faith in each other as members. They were working together, but they were also able to take instruction. And then whoever was giving the instruction, he also showed care and concern for them by asking if they needed to stop. And then I noticed people on the inside and the outside, and that kind of reflects to me as well. Of course, the heavy workload, but also, I don't assume ill intent, but there was a little bit of lack of sensitivity with the comment about the women, but whatever.
Very true.
I'll read Dr. Holman's. Working together as a team, sometimes end results take time.
Excellent. Very true.
That's it, sir.
Excellent, Dr. Holman. What else, Ricky?
So we had more watchers than doers. One voice to lead everybody. They were going in the same direction, but they moved slowly. And some were blind and had to just listen to the instruction.
Excellent. Very good. Ms.
I'll go
Ryan.
next. Obviously, I put the first one down as teamwork, and then purposeful movement and pacing, and then I said lift from the knees, which I think speaks to the heavy workload that everybody else was talking about.
Excellent points.
I said literally they took steps together to accomplish a goal, and then I also said teamwork, and then I said they took breaks when needed.
Excellent point.
I noticed that at the end you didn't really know how many people were lifting that until everyone got outside the barn. So
True.
Say it
Some
again?
behind the scenes.
344, but from the outside, if you were just observing or not paying attention to the number in the beginning.
Right.
You did watch it, right?
I did watch
Right.
it. Thank
Good
you.
observation, Mr. Snow. Anything we've left out? I just jotted in, you've got every one of them, except maybe the bottom two here. Heavy task, you need muscles, you need hope, it takes strength. Slow and steady, you can stop, you can rest. Always forward, you said exactly the same thing. Be careful of your heels. You talked about caring about people. Different roles you brought up. Keep on going. Slow when you need to be slow. Encouragement. And I thought they also reflected at the end and they celebrated. So all of those are what school boards need to do. And what we're going to talk about tonight is how you've done that in the last year. But I think it's a really good visual for you to be thinking about in all of this really hard work that you're doing, it's similar to moving that barn, and it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be without all sorts of struggle, but you need all of those pieces. Otherwise, it's going to fall, and you're not going to get it to move. So thank you for cooperating with that. On your agenda, you see, I'm going to come back to review of key work of school boards, so keep that. Let's skip down to review of OPS norms, and you can see there, because Matt included it, my notes on your thing, we're going to identify positive examples individually, and then we're going to share, and then we're going to talk about them. So about a year ago, it's actually in about August, when Dr. Logan was just coming, we got together at the Learning Community North Site and went through an experience in which we brainstormed for potential norms, and then we had some stickers. We could pick whichever we wanted, and these were the norms that you selected. So I'm going to ask you to read them instead of me, except for Dr. Holman can't read. So, Ms. Kratke, you start with remain on the bottom right there.
Remain.
You have to push the button, I think, right?
It's on, but
Okay.
Well, I think I talk loudly. It seems like no one can hear me. Remain focused on student achievement through actions and conversation. And I can't emphasize that one enough, even though it didn't tell me I could do that.
Now I'm going to have well, Dr. Holman can't, so
I'll
Mr.
read.
Snow.
Respect the uniqueness of each sub-district while maintaining a district-wide perspective.
The next one is listen empty, monitor personal biases, seek to understand.
Clearly communicate and follow the chain of command process.
Value the past, but focus on the future. Let it go.
Speak respectfully to all.
Support board decisions when they are made, regardless of individual vote.
And the last one is help hold each other accountable for following norms. So this is what you said a year ago, that you were going to pledge that you thought if you did this, you would be a better, more effective, more efficient Board of Education. So what I want you to do, all by yourself, not sharing with anybody else, on your piece of paper or whatever, are identify examples of things that have happened in the past school year that demonstrate a positive example of as many of those as you can. So what did you as a board do that absolutely shows you, for instance, listened empty, monitored person biases, and sought to understand? And then we're going to share some of those. Okay. Oh, I got to turn this on, I suppose. So I'm going to let you pick a card, and you're going to find your partner. You can go anywhere in this room you want to. Just sit down and talk about if you, as a pair, were going to share 3 or 4 ideas about what happened last year that prove you lived up to your norms, what would they be? So I'm going to give you about 10 minutes to go somewhere and with your partner and talk about it. So, oh, thank
I
you.
want to.
You want to.
Lives house. Does have 2 people guys. I like yours. Of course, remember, you could be low or high.
Okay, so there's a pair. Find your partner. I'm going to give you 10 minutes, so we're going to go until 6:42. Share with each other what you came up with about how this board reaffirmed or practiced your norms last year. Okay. Queen. 6:42. Come up with some really great examples. Great examples.
I wrote down the areas of current need, as we are supposed to be talking about, the district info for communities. This to me was moving forward. We didn't have this until today, and I asked about it. It is so important to have these facts in front of us as a school board. Wherever we go, we need this information. It changes. So that's, to me, I thought that was really good. Now, the curriculum.
plastic.
They went somewhere.
I numbered them because I just
Okay, we're going to get back together in about 2 minutes, so finish up your conversations. You're ready. Okay. I'm missing a group. They left. Okay, come on back to your seats, please.
Would you like some coffee? I can get you some. I'll get it for you. I'm happy to get it for you. I can get it. It's ready. This black coffee. Okay.
Thank you very much for taking some time to talk about the norms. We had 4 groups. Worked out very nicely. So we'll just let the groups take turns to kind of report. Let's start with, can we start with those of you that just came in? Ms. Ryan, Dr. Holman. I know you were. I'm starting with, the ones that
It's okay. We
obviously
were the ace too.
The
so
aces,
either
okay.
Top or bottom card.
So what did you find from our norms that you thought this Board of Education is really doing a great job?
So over the last year, we reflected that respect for all and the discussion that we have at the board table has increased. Which also leads into one of our other ones, that people are more willing to ask questions. And so some people who have been either more quiet at the board table or haven't been heard at the board table are more willing to ask those questions. I think we're being a little bit more realistic on the things that we can accomplish instead of over-promising, and then following the chain of command when it comes to those promises. So, yeah.
Thank you. Good insights. Dr. Holman, do you want to add anything, like playing charades or something? Okay, so that's the ACE group. What was the King group? King group.
You can turn your mic on, please. Okay, thank you.
So we've been doing really good with doing outreach stuff. Our parents and constituents providing us with feedback on how they feel about some of the things that are going on with the board. We talked about the amount of phone calls and text messages and emails we get and how we handle those. So again, being respectful and listening to different people and different opinions and ideas. We talked about being able to let things go and move forward and getting our employees on track and caught up with some of the other trends of the surrounding districts. So those contracts and those things that are very, very important when it comes to running a district, getting those where they need to be. Anything you want to add to that?
I've only been here since January, but I do like the norms. I was just saying in my limited time, probably with the professional development, researching, but just as a community person anyway, just being available and listening, but also making sure that following that chain of command, which is very, very helpful. So, yeah.
Good. You caught up in it quickly. Oh, yeah. Good for you. Where's our queens? Not in any way, shape, or form. What are the queens? What did you find as norms that we've done a good job with?
We had a little bit of a hard time because we were kind of going around in circles, but hopefully we have a few. Do you want to do one of yours, or?
I think people listen empty.
Okay, I found a few positives.
Listen empty is a positive. That's good.
I said that I think that we, let's see, hold on. The speak respectfully to all, I think that especially during closed session, which can oftentimes be more of a point in our after meetings where we can speak a little more candidly and sometimes maybe lose that respect that we don't all, we maintain that when we're in front of the public, but during closed session can be different. But I think we've done a really good job during closed session on listening to each other and trying to value each other's opinions, which is important. And then I also said the clearly communicate and follow the chain of command. I think we've done pretty well realizing that things that we all want accomplished within our own sub-districts can't happen all at once. We need to go about them piece by piece and follow that chain of command to try to get certain things accomplished. Oftentimes that means from the top down, trying to get things done. Those were two that I had.
Thank you. Mr. Perlman, would you like to add anything to that? Okay. And then, not least, but last, the twos.
The twos.
The deuce.
The heart?
The heart. The eight. Oh, the eight. Shoot, it was going to be twos.
The
Eight.
The
Eight.
crazy 88.
The crazy eight. Okay, we can
All right,
say
crazy
that.
eight.
Crazy eight.
Nancy, do you want to go first?
I've been on the board since January also, and that was after a leave and back to the board and several times. I don't see dissension within the board. I don't see us having a problem when we're in executive session or anywhere else. I don't think anyone has been rude to anyone else. I've not witnessed that. Sometimes I wish other people would express themselves a little bit more on all the subjects, because then we would know a little bit more input about where everyone is and where they're coming from, because sometimes I really don't know. I assume maybe, but it's been a fine time being back on the board. I think we have such good people in the district that we can go to and can help us. No one knows how good those people are, how well trained, how years of experience. They know a lot.
Mr. Snow.
I will agree. I would say that as a board, I believe we have been focused on student achievement through our actions and conversations at the board table. I know sometimes when you see it, some people will say your meeting went fast, but at the end of the day, we have our committee groups and we have one-on-one conversations with the superintendent and understanding. And I think that is something I've seen this board really step up to do, is really focus on student achievement in a way that it has, I would say, empowered the superintendent more to be able to make some very difficult decisions, knowing that the board has her back. So kudos.
And remember what we talked about doing with our consent agenda.
Oh, that was
That's a little
sidebar later.
different.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you very much. What I'm going to do, even though nobody asked me to, but I can't help myself, is I am going to try to go home tonight or the next day and take some of the thoughts that you had and connect them with the norms, and I'll give it back to Dr. Logan, and if she keeps it, that's fine. If she shares with you, that's fine. But I think it's really important for the board to keep reminding yourselves this is how we said we'd work with each other. These are our operating principles. So very nice job of doing that, and I appreciate you cooperating so much. Yes?
I mean, I completely like them. I'm just wondering, do they change, or I'm just wondering.
They can change whenever the board decides you want to change them. I've worked in organizations where oftentimes when a new leader comes in, you set the norms because you want to say, okay, how are we going to treat each other? And I think it's important for that organization to go back and remind ourselves of what they are. Dr. Logan and I work together on the MOAC Executive Steering Committee, and I try to put those norms on frequently to remind us, this is what we said, best case scenario, this is how we're going to act. But if it gets to the point that they don't fit what you need anymore, then absolutely change them. You're welcome. At the same meeting a year ago, you met with a representative from the School Boards Association. Marcia Herring, thank you. And she led you through results of a survey that you had taken about yourself. And she reviewed the key work of boards there that's outlined 5 points: vision, accountability, policy, community leadership, and board and superintendent relationship. And then she went through and talked to you about what Omaha School Board had evaluated themselves as the strongest points and as the points that needed most work. So what I did was go back to that document, and I picked the equal number of strengths and an equal number of need areas. They're on the back, but I have them on a different sheet. And what I would like you to do is not put your name on this, because I want you to really think through, read carefully each of those areas of strength and each of those areas of need, and tell us a year later, August 2019, how do you think this Board of Education is doing related to these? And I'm going to ask you to put down a number for each of them, 1 being we're doing horribly, and 7 meaning we've knocked it out of the park. Okay? No names, because I want your feedback to be anonymous. And then after you've thought through carefully, I'm going to collect them, and you get to take your first break, and I'm going to try, maybe with the help of Mr. Ray, to tell you as a group what you said they were. So this has got it a little bigger and has a spot for you to put a number. 1 being low, 7 being high. Here, I've got more here. You need another one?
No, we're good.
Nope. So how did you do this year? Both of them? How did you do this year?
1 to 7 on each of the blanks.
Yep, right. 1 to 7 on each of the blanks. Thank you. Yeah, good question. 1 to 7 on each of the blanks. For this year, how did you do as a board? You don't have to worry if it was a strength or an area of need. Just how did you do this year working together in these categories?
They're done. So there's no way for it to get better, right? Because there isn't even enough money left, right?
Yeah, the first one we have a strategic plan coming up, so yeah, we'll probably just put an NA on the first one.
We're just starting the strategic plan. We delayed it a year.
Oh, you delayed it a year? Okay, so yes, you can put NA on the first one.
I don't know, I want to give them all the same number. So if you finish, or when you finish, I'll take it, and we're going to take about 10 minutes for you to go rest.
bring us back. Our mathematician is out doing the very difficult math, dividing by the number of board members, etc. And as soon as he's back, we'll look at the results of what your snapshot. This is just a snapshot as we look at it tonight. This is how the board members around the table feel about how we're doing as a board, related to how we felt we were doing a year ago. So the next thing on our agenda is to take the concepts about how a board works together and the concepts about the norms that you've set for yourselves and look at 3 very important topics that Omaha Public Schools is going to wrestle with or has wrestled with or is in the middle of wrestling with. And those are boundary changes in the student assignment plans, strategic plan, and the superintendent evaluation. So let's take the first one because it's really probably the most concrete right now. As remember, on the front of this sheet is what the Nebraska School Boards Association reminds you are this is the key work of boards: having a vision, having accountability, setting policy, leading in the community, and doing this while you're in relationship with the superintendent. And then you know what our 8 norms are. So talking about boundary changes, and you know much more about this than I do, but how has the board, let's first of all talk about how has the board really completed the key work of school boards as you've wrestled with the concept of boundary changes and student assignment plan. Ms. Kratky.
I feel good about it because they invited us in to have a conversation, and they listened to us one by one. And I went in there with trepidation, wondering, what are they going to do to my district? You know, what is going to happen here? Because I didn't want anybody to. I have ownership of it because I feel like I'm out there kind of sometimes alone. And so I am protective, I guess would be the word. And anybody who knows me would know that about me. And it turned out just great. And when I left, I felt very at ease and very happy. And they listened to me. And they didn't know what I was going to come up with, you know. But I didn't know what they were coming up with either. So I think it turned out well. I felt good about it.
So since we're talking about the key work of boards, I'm going to classify that under the concept of community leadership, and that they led the community to this conversation. When we get back to talking norms, you can bring that one back up too. So I'll come back to you. But so the board listened carefully and communicated with the stakeholders. Who else would like to share something?
I have a quick question, clarifying question.
Yes.
Where are you comparing the NASB's things of board members? Is that on the front? The purpose
review
of that?
Under agenda, the 4th dot, review of key work of school boards.
Okay.
Key work of school boards, vision, accountability, policy, community leadership, and relationship with the superintendent. Thank you for asking the clarifying question.
So what strategic plan?
Pardon me?
Strategic
No, we're
plan.
talking with
Boundaries.
boundaries and student assignment plan.
Okay.
How have you worked on the key work or exhibited the key work of school boards?
Fair. Well, I'm not on that committee, but I'll let Mr. Smith go, who's part of it.
So, one thing was we got the information really early, and we were able to share that with different parents and people who it would affect. And so being able to have that information early, that was one of the things that as a school board, I think we discussed is we have it sooner than we can make decisions. We can go over it with a fine-tooth comb and saying these are some of the changes or recommendations that we have or the questions that we have, so we can go back to the drawing board or even adjust who may be on committees and be able to get the word out to the constituents and voters.
So did you have a specific format that you use to disseminate the information or to gather information?
Well, I did, yeah. We had a couple of different community meetings, and then being the chair of the African American Achievement Council, we shared that with parents who were used to getting busing and then realizing that some of these things would change the following year. And again, letting them know a year in advance, these are the things that you're going to have to prepare for. Your child may not get a bus or you might have one kid who's registered at one school and then you can't get this one in at that time because of the population, and those kind of things we tried to iron out before it became an issue for the district.
Thank you. What else?
Okay, I think we did it in two ways. One, from, I would say, the administrative side of just trying to get the information out there from people in the community. We've had some community groups, I believe. We had them for each area, for all our high schools, and then one for the elementary. And then on the other side, in the, the Student Assignment Plan Committee that we have, was the administration and the board really going through district by district, sub-district, and looking at the current map, assessing that, having a history on that with research. So by time we come to the board table to have a discussion, also they had individual meetings of board members. Every board member at the table has either had an individual meeting or has been in that committee, which is powerful because no one on the board is surprised and saying, whoa, I've never seen this. And the superintendents had a discussion with them.
Great.
So it runs a lot smoother, especially when you know you have this huge, difficult task and people are going to wonder if they're going to go to the new school or not.
Okay, it's one of the biggest deals there is in schools is whenever you said, so did the school board, did the district have a vision? Because did you have a vision for what was going to? I'm seeing yes and I'm seeing no. So tell me both sides of that. You.
I would say, yeah, we had a vision. I think the district did a really nice job. We collaborated really well with the departments, different departments, the research department particularly. Their work was evident every time we met with them. They were thorough, prepared. They did not leave any stone unturned as far as what we needed what they needed to convey to us as a board. We were just given every ounce of information that we could. As Mr. Snow said, kind of piggyback that. They went through each sub-district, gave us different scenarios, showed us past maps so we could make educated assumptions as to which would be the best plan, and just try to kind of look and see which of the plans that we were going to present to the public would probably fail, which ones wouldn't. You can't make everyone happy, so they were very thorough in that, and I think that was part of conveying the vision that the district wanted for the different boundaries. I think it helped. The transparency's been amazing.
Good.
I don't know that anyone could say this process hasn't been transparent. I would definitely not. I would tell anyone. I would absolutely tell them I don't agree with that. I think that we were absolutely transparent across the board. Community meetings were ample. Whether people attended them or not, they were out there. They were publicized. They were, social media, different outlets. There was ample opportunity for the community to come, which I thought was very, very necessary. With our board, I think that the public really wants to see transparency, and I think it really came across with this particular topic.
Hey, Mr. Perlman, you don't necessarily agree with that. What kind of thoughts did you have about vision for this process?
Right. I don't know if anyone on this board was asked or gave input onto the future of magnet schools. That's policy, that's leadership, that's the future of the district. I wasn't asked about that, and
we haven't. Let me just say this: we have the future of magnet schools is a part of our strategic planning, so it will not occur until the fall. So the boundaries are one thing. Magnet schools and the student assignment plan are the next phase that will happen between October of 2019 and October of 2020. So we haven't made it to that phase yet, but you definitely will be asked. We needed to set the boundaries first, and then we could start talking about our programming. But we also wanted to be thoughtful about that programming, and that it where we may need to augment or pivot on some of our magnet programs. We didn't just want to do that without having all the information and all the folks at the table. So we will get to that.
Mr. Perlman, I will say that during our strategic planning boundary meetings, we did bring that up, and we were told that immediately that that would be something we would talk about after the boundaries are set, just so you know that we did bring that up.
Okay. So I think it would be helpful if those sorts of things were communicated to the board as soon as possible, so that, that's just something that would be on our radar. I know that there's been a little bit of a paradigm shift in the district over the past 5 to 10 years of taking sixth grade out of elementary schools. I know past boards on a split vote have supported that. I think the majority of this board has been on this board 2 years or less. And I don't know if we've been even educated on what that means, or what elementary schools in the district are going to go to fifth grade, are going to go to sixth grade, what the future looks like in the district in that regard over the next 10 to 20 years. So just there's a whole lot of policy issues that I think this board should be caught up to speed on, and how those decisions were made, because I understand that if those decisions were made years ago, each new board, and a board could change its makeup every 2 years, isn't going to say, wait, stop, let's, you know what I mean? We can't stop things and, so, but just from a policy perspective, I've never been asked or educated on what that means for student achievement, what the district's goals are, again, for 5 to 10 years down the line, what that means for our middle schools. And all of these things, I think, have some impact on the boundary changes and the student assignment plans, or even what the board would like to see policy-wise in a student assignment plan. And I think it's going to be developed. I think we heard at our last board meeting that those plans are going to be started immediately. By who? By what policy guidelines? And so I really loved what we were presented as far as the boundaries, but I think I think that was, I hate to say the word luck, because I know it was a lot of hard work. It wasn't luck, it was a lot of hard work. For me and the folks in my district, it happened to turn out the way that they wanted. But I just feel like there's a lot of room for improvement when we're talking about policy decisions. That is what this board's tasks is. So,
okay, I'll make a note of that. I want you to think about the same topic: boundary changes, student assignment plan, and now I want you to think in terms of your norms, the 8 norms we talked about. As you went through the most recent conversations about it, how did you practice your norms? Or as you go through the next phase, how must you practice your norms? Same topic: boundary changes, student assignment plans. Your 8 norms. What's going to help you? Okay, how's that going to help with the norms?
It's not, but I'm talking about the boundaries right now. That had a lot to do with how that was all determined.
Okay.
And the makeup of that.
I think moving forward for norms, I think for the board table, I think it would be needed for us to put these norms in the board room and at the board table so everybody sees them every board meeting, just to kind of that refresher. Because if you look at it, you can skim it and see, like, all right, these are our norms, this is what we're doing today. So I think that's something that I think we should start doing moving forward. And,
That
think that's
something that
powerful.
does help with is then you can remind each other in the middle of conversation. And remember, one of our norms is that we will clearly communicate and follow the chain of command process. And did you do that when you were talking about boundary changes? I'm guessing yes, but I wasn't there. You were there. But I think that's an excellent idea, but I'll leave that up to people in the district on whether they want to do that or not. Did you practice your norms while you were having doing this work on boundary changes?
Well, I have a comment on that. I have a pretty vocal constituency, and they asked me to hold meetings. I'll never turn down a meeting with a constituent, whether it's one person or 40. And I'll be honest, I felt like, maybe some people didn't think I should be doing that. And I had a hard time understanding that. I wasn't trying to go outside the chain of command, but I would hope that any elected official, if asked to meet with a group, will meet with a group. I guess I follow the chain of command insofar as letting everyone know, but my number one responsibility is to the people in my district. I think there's a little bit of confusion on that on the part of some who our loyalty is to, and whether it's to the folks in our district, whether it's to school buildings, whether it's to the district, or a combination. And I think without having a clear understanding of who our number one constituent is, who our boss is, then I think it makes things difficult.
The issue you bring up is exactly the same issue that our state representatives in Lincoln and our federal representatives in Washington have to deal with. When I come here, do I vote my mind and my soul? Or when I come here, do I take a snapshot of what they say back home and vote that way? And there are obviously differing opinions on that. So I can't answer for sure. You do have as a norm, your second one, respect the uniqueness of each subdivision while maintaining a district-wide perspective, which doesn't necessarily answer the question you're giving, but reminds you that it may not be one or the other. It may be attending to both. But he raises a good point. So if you're having a potentially divisive conversation as a school district as a whole, is it a good idea for a board member to hold a meeting? And when you say meeting, I get a different picture than if you say have a conversation, because I think there's a difference.
Well, I think a board member can do anything. You're elected not by the district, you're elected by your sub-district. I attended that meeting with Mr. Perlman. He invited me and I attended. I've never turned down a meeting. I think the conversation comes where you're like, respect the uniqueness of your sub-district, but the overall part of the district, that means all the facts that you present in that meeting have to be accurate. Because having a meeting that facts they're not accurate, or you're just making assumptions, then people are going to come back to the district and say, this is what I was told. So that's that makeup there. And to Mr. Perlman's point, many of the things have been answered about his district, some of their concerns, because the people in the administration as well as the district were getting those same feedback that he was. So they were already knowing that he has a very vocal district, and how do you fix that before it becomes a problem? So if there was like a communication, it was probably not letting him know that the district knew that they knew that his sub-district was going to be very vocal about these certain things. Does that, it doesn't answer his, but that's just my explanation of it.
Thank you.
Well, I tend to agree, but as you know also, I made it very clear to people, that I don't just represent one neighborhood. And when people started talking about, I don't want my kid to go to this high school or that high school, I went out of my way to let them know that maybe they should get educated about all the great things that are happening in all the schools. But I'm there to represent the people in my district. And I think it's actually healthy for everyone to, not to the detriment of any other district. It's hard, but I just think that it's very important to know who our number one. I think it's important to know who our boss is, and to advocate for everyone in that district. And I think it becomes a more healthy relationship with everyone on the board when they understand that.
So if everyone in the board from different districts held their own meeting, what are some potential downsides of that?
Misinformation. But I think there's two things here. So I really do believe we are all elected by our sub-district. We are delegates, right? We are voting for the interest of our sub-district. That's what we're supposed to know from the ground up. But I believe at the board table, we must be board trustees, right? Because every decision we make is not for District A or B. It's going to affect the entire school district. We're not making a teacher contract with OEA for Minnelusa. The contract's for the entire district. So I think those are those things that happen. My personal relationship with the superintendent, when we're one-on-one, I'm a delegate. I'm telling her about every single thing that I hear in my sub-district. She's already hearing those things. And I think that's something we have to do with the superintendent, is to be that delegate to our chief of staff board, Mr. Ray, is be that delegate and express those concerns. Our constituents will do that as well. And our one-on-ones, we do it, or should be doing that. And at the board table is when we come together and we think of the whole district of 54,000 kids, and how does that decision affect all students, and how does raising the achievement level of one sub-district helps the overall health of the greater Omaha Public Schools. So
Can I add? Oh,
I was going to ask that. I'm sorry.
I was just going to add to that. As someone who has been active in the community for a very long time, I agree with Mark. And I would also add that when I look at the third norm, listen to empty, monitor personal biases, and seek to understand, I'm not going to say all people, but typically most people, when you do that, I think that there may be some differences by sub-district, but when you do that, people are more willing and open to accepting changes that involve the entire district, if that makes sense.
It does.
Most people are not typically confrontational. And if you're listening to them, like it says here, and being diplomatic and understanding, really seek to understand, you can get past most of that.
I was just going to say, as a part of the boundary discussion, originally we were going to have one high school meeting, and then I was asked by one board member to have a separate meeting for just their district. And as a result of that, we had 7, because I felt strongly and continue to feel strongly that if we're going to open it up, that we open it up for everybody. And I'm glad that we did that, because we really had that need from the beginning to do 7. And some were more attended than others, but it didn't matter. It was the fact that we as a district feel strongly that when we're going to have any sort of major policy implications, that we want to have as many voices at the table as possible. And so with the student assignment plan, which there is a student assignment plan committee of this Board of Education, we will do similar processes to make sure that we are hearing from constituents throughout the district. And we're committed to do that. Again, I'm going to thank staff again, because thank you, Tracy, for thanking them, because it was a big lift to do all of those meetings. But this is important work, and it was important to hear from constituents around the district. They were very passionate and represented themselves well.
And I went to a couple of those meetings, and some of them I think I went to like 3 of them, and one of them got kind of heated, but I will say that the staff, the administration, they did a great job. And I mean, they were very detailed. Like I said, there were some people who were heated or upset, but they did a really good job of explaining it, breaking it down for them. I really enjoyed the process. And when I talked to different teachers and principals too, they really enjoyed the process as well.
So to me, as an outsider not participating in that, it seems to me that many of those norms that you've talked about as our norms, you practiced when you were having that conversation. Now, there may be a difficult one coming up, because at some point you have to vote, or you voted on part of it, you have to keep voting on student assignment plans. The 7th norm says support board decisions when they are made regardless of individual vote. So you're going to have 9 people at the table. If there's anyone who feels in his or her heart, I need to vote against that, they have every right in the world to do so. What has to happen after that vote's done?
I said agree to disagree.
But say the board as a whole has made such and such a decision. That's one of your norms.
Well, can I ask a question?
Sure.
What if a board member thinks that that's the wrong decision?
The textbook answer would be, I may not have agreed with that decision, but the board as a whole passed it, and so I'm on board with it. That would be the best answer for a board moving forward to practice these kind of norms. I mean, you can certainly say, I wasn't necessarily on board with it, but that's the vote of the board, and I'm now going to support it.
What if it puts students in danger?
Well, I don't know how to answer that one.
No.
You need to, in your discussion, you need to convince at least 4 other board members that it's going to be harmful to kids.
Yeah.
So they vote against it.
Yeah. That's where I get back to my bosses and people in my sub-district. And
No, well, I'm not going to argue with you. I might not think of them as my boss. I might think of them as the people I listen to the most, but you're really representing everyone. And so you can't make decisions based only on this group. You got to make decisions based on the whole.
Oh, completely agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then that's your answer. I made the decision I felt was best, but the board as a whole made a different decision, and I'm going to support that decision.
I think
Easier to say it for me to say it than if I were in the heat of debate and I was not in agreement. Yes.
I think that we are provided, or we have the ability to get the information as we go and we're in front of, or we are associating with those groups. One in particular, I have been able to, I don't know, they just think I'm doing the right thing, or they can trust me, I guess. And they may not agree with some of the things that happen with taxes, etc., but they are understanding because you give them the numbers, you give them the information, and that's why our little new sheet is so important to me. Because when I like to quote our real numbers and the real facts, and then they come around to the understanding. I mean, there's just so much that we do in our district that isn't necessarily done in surrounding districts because they don't have those kinds of needs. So we are just huge in our need category.
Can I add to your point on respecting the decision?
Absolutely.
I think we are all have sub-districts of about 30,000 people. So in that, you look at majority of the city. If majority of the city makes a decision, as a tax-paying citizen, you should, I wouldn't say taxpayer, I'm just saying as an individual, you should support, I wouldn't say support, but respect that decision. Now you can continue trying to change that. That's what we do in our committees, and that's what you should do if you feel compelled or convicted. And I think anyone sitting in an elected position, especially this school board, does not sit. The first thing we think of are the 54,000 kids in the district and to keep them safe. No one intentionally wants to. So I think that's just something, I might think it differently than you, but I think it's just understanding where we're coming from and knowing that we might have a sub-district that thinks differently, but collectively as a whole, I mean, this is the only way to get things done. It's kind of like the Supreme Court. You know, you have that person that writes a dissent, but, you know, they're not going to the next hearing talking about the previous vote and how,
Good
you know,
example.
So
Good example.
I'm not a lawyer, by the way. So I had to.
Yeah, they call them opinions for a reason. There's some pretty awful ones over the last few hundred years.
So let's move to that second topic that we were presented with, and that's the strategic plan. And I understand you're just going to start that work coming up. So let's go down to those 3 questions that are listed on the agenda. What will be the role of the board? How may we best support the district? And what is our expected outcome? So as you get ready to start work on the strategic plan for Omaha Public Schools, what's the role of the board?
The role of the board in the strategic plan, I think, first and foremost, because of our sub-district, kind of echo things that we would like to see in the strategic plan. The superintendent's been taking notes of a lot of those things, and then also see what the superintendent and the administration, but the administration sees that should be in the strategic plan, staff, and then community. So what the role of the board would be is to make sure all those 4 individual points, I would say 5, including the taxpayer, are all met. The students, their voices heard, teachers, the administration, our colleagues, and the taxpayers. So if they're all heard, then I think we know that everyone's voice has been heard when we say aye for the strategic plan.
Students, parents, taxpayers?
No, students, teachers, and students and parents, and I consider them one group. So students, parents, teachers, the administration, taxpayers, and our colleagues on the board. And colleagues on the board, we're voicing our concerns or things we want to see in the strategic plan from our constituents. So if you're a constituent in a sub-district and you're a parent, you get to voice your concern twice.
Okay.
Do you see what I'm saying? Yep. Or a teacher, you get 3 times. So
Good
just making sure all
description.
those points are heard.
Anyone else on thoughts about role of the board in the upcoming work related to strategic plan?
As I've thought about it as being like a support to Dr. Logan. So, like, when I think about it for myself, I think about members of the community, or I think about the entire district, not just my sub-district. But I think about communicating the fact that Dr. Logan is going to be working on the strategic plan, communicating the process and steps involved, but then also, like Mark said, gathering information from individuals within those districts or sub-districts and communicating that to Dr. Logan. I mean, there are a lot of people who have opinions about the strategic plan, and so I think, we owe it to be a support and make sure we're sharing that information, good or bad. I also see us as a tool to make sure that we're communicating that information to the public and also reminding them to keep eye on it as well.
Thank you. Other thoughts?
Well, I think school board has 3 jobs: hire and evaluate the superintendent, formulate the budget, not in depth, but to approve a budget, and to set the vision and the policy of a district. So I don't want to just make sure that students, teachers, parents, and administrators are heard. Of course, we all want that. But I want the vision and policy goals of the board to be at the foundation of the strategic plan. I think that is one of our 3 statutory goals, not goals, requirements. And so I would like to know how that is going to be sought and implemented, because as I sit here now, I don't know the answer to that, and I'm not sure that anyone here knows the answer to that.
When you say I would like to know how that would be sought, What do you mean, the vision and policy, or?
Sure. How it will be sought, how it will be developed by the board, what its goals are for the next 5 years, and how a board goes about thinking about that.
We're going to do a little bit of brainstorming on that tonight, just a little bit.
Okay.
Get you started.
Okay.
Good.
And then ongoing support for that continual dialogue about the process of developing the goals that are fleshed out from those visions of what we would like to see over the course of the next, I say 5 years, but really the next 3 to 7 years.
Mr. Smith?
So one of our core values to remain focused on student achievement through actions and conversation. That's going to be key in the strategic plan. That's going to give us an opportunity to really implement that value. And when you're doing that strategic plan, you want to put the education of those students first and what we want the future to look like for those students. And so again, to me, it's being able to write the strategic plan is an opportunity for us to get those things on paper, and then again be able to put together some policy that will support those things. So it's not necessarily it's about one district, it's about the entire district and what we can do to provide our teachers with the resources that they need, how we can prepare students for jobs that don't even exist yet. And it's about being innovative and thinking about the future and not being so stuck in the past or how things used to be done. It gives us a chance to be forward thinking, I guess. And so it's a lot of opportunities there for us. So again, I don't believe in just being stuck in writing policy and then having to listen to constituents. It's more so about what is it that we can do for our kids right now that will change their futures later on.
So I'm guessing it wasn't an accident that you really pointed out a couple of the norms right in the statement you just made. Intentionally. Very well done. Anyone else?
Mine is all about the academics in the curriculum. And Mark and I were doing brainstorming, but it was his idea. He gets the title of it. What's the title? Tell us, Mark.
Did you know?
Did you know? On our meetings. We have the consent agenda. It just goes fast. People out there don't know what we're doing unless maybe they've looked into the agenda on the webpage or something. But otherwise, they don't know what we're doing up there. We just say aye to everything, and it's all done. We don't pull things out. But if that one could be addressed each time, they would learn something more about what we are doing. I think the public really wants, if they have that kind of information, they're going to be a lot more on our team knowing what we're about and what we're doing. So I think that might be very helpful.
So since our topic is strategic plan, so what you're suggesting, I think you're suggesting something broader, but I'm going to pull it to, you think it would be helpful to tell the public on a regular basis what we're doing related to strategic plan, and probably a lot of other things, but in this case.
And go sort of subject by subject or something. We have maybe an outline. We're going to hit that category next, so that they keep getting briefed on what we're doing, rather than read a little summary in the newspaper and then ask questions and not know what we're doing. And then bad-mouthing. We get a lot of bad-mouthing.
Oh, yeah. Everybody does.
We especially do, I think.
You even did as a parent, probably, so. I did, by my kids. Anything else related to the role of the board? And so nicely, you've already brought in some of the norms and how that'll affect the conversation. Nicely done. So the last topic under the topics that we've been presented with is talking about the evaluation of your superintendent. Key work of the board, remember, has to do with the vision, accountability, policy, community leadership, and very importantly, the board-superintendent relationship. So as you see your role as a board, let's talk about what's happening and what should happen. And then as you see your norms of working together, what's happening and what should happen. So, related to superintendent evaluation, I don't know how it went today this year. I'm not talking about what you said. I'm talking about the process.
What
did the process
work?
The process of having the board involved in evaluating the superintendent. I don't want to know what you said. I would just want the process.
I thought it was an open process. I thought it was I was the chair of the committee. I thought that we had a thoughtful conversation and open dialogue with the superintendent, and board members had enough time to evaluate the superintendent on her first year. I think moving forward, and we've had this discussion, how can we take the strategic plan and embed it in her evaluation, the superintendent's evaluation, so she's not being evaluated on one thing and tasked with another. So,
Good point. Anyone else? Yes.
We were not given enough time to do the superintendent evaluation. It was emailed to us, and I think we were given 5 or 6 days to complete it. And it was only partial because I think we started late. We almost missed the deadline. So I think the email came out on a Sunday or Monday, and we were asked to get it back on Thursday. So I didn't turn one in this year. I didn't have time. I had a busy week at work, 6 days. I have no idea what the results of that evaluation were because there was no follow-up with the board about any responses. I didn't see it. Maybe someone did. I didn't. I just think it could have been handled better this year.
For some of the points that Mr. Perlman raised about time and commitment, we had a week to do that because I was also on that committee, and I remember when discussing the timeline for it, and it was rushed, but a week should be long enough for us, and that's a part of the accountability piece. And the key work of school boards is being accountable to the work that we have, and that all of us are very busy and have a lot of other things going on in our lives, but we had a week to finish it. And then we also did discuss the evaluation of the superintendent at the board meeting, and everything was given to us there. And then we had in closed session the option to talk to Dr. Logan about what was said. So just being accountable and community leadership, and we decided to run for this job, and we knew we were going to be busy, so that's part of our accountability.
Okay, so if we want to go there, Lorraine Godding sent a message saying that we have forgotten about the superintendent evaluation, and so it wouldn't have gotten done except that she sent that email saying that we are about to violate the law by not getting it done. That's why we only had a week. So if we want to talk about accountability,
but
we can
how
have
much
that
time do you
conversation.
need? Now, but the thing is that we had it. We said we got it built and ready to go through research, and you have a week to do that. That is a completely reasonable timeline for us as adults to complete one of the functions of our primary job.
I just was going to add, I'm pretty sure that if you started the evaluation, because I'm pretty sure that I didn't finish it. I was able to come back and come in right where I left off. So I started it one evening, and then I got busy with children and homework, and I came right back in another evening, and I was well able to do it within 7 days. And I have a house, 3 kids, a dog, a rabbit. I could go on, and a full-time job.
So I'm hearing some disagreement on whether or not there was sufficient time, but I'm hearing some concepts that say we did have enough time and it's our job to do it. By policy, we have to do it. Actually, if you look back on what you said in May of 2018, you said that ended up being one of your strengths. Renewal and deadline processes are clear, and board and superintendent honor the process. It sounds like maybe in the first year with the superintendent, you didn't necessarily have that on the calendar several months out. You learned from that, maybe, put it on the calendar. But I'm hearing most members felt comfortable with it. Yes.
I think what held it up for a little while was that we didn't have a set form or evaluation form we were looking at. We looked at various ones to try to pull them together and do what needed to be done and we thought was important to have in there. And it's kind of hard to even look nationally at what does that form look like? What do they use over there? So that was some of the searching that we were doing as we were getting to that point.
Can I add to that? Okay, so the the issue of the timeliness is the law. The law says that we have to report at a certain time. Some of the things in our evaluation for the superintendent aren't typically completed until the end of June. So if the state wants it at the first of the month, we have to require research to stop everything they're doing to try to gather all that information for us to evaluate. And some of those things we went through that weren't complete, that the SUP said, and we tasked the superintendent to bring that stuff once it's complete. And that was the reason why a lot of those things at the end got rushed, because when we set those goals for the superintendent, you know, when you're running a school district, 54,000 kids, you're like, oh, yeah, we can get this data the last day after school. That's not possible.
Right.
So it's just setting realistic goals, and we did set those realistic goals. And when someone says you barely met the deadline, that means you met the deadline.
Well, the job of the board, key work, is vision, accountability, policy, communication, or community leadership, and board relationships. So it sounds like most of you thought that was close, but you all have some suggestions on it could be perhaps better in the future. Okay, now looking at the norms for our board, same topic, how do we apply our norms to that topic? Mr. Smith, you're very good at pulling this out. It's harder on this topic. It's harder.
Well, I think obviously the things that we're wanting to make sure that the superintendent is doing is helping our students to succeed. And so when we create the tool for the superintendent evaluation, making sure that student achievement is always aligned with those questions that we're asking. And then further, when we're looking at incorporating the strat plan in there with her evaluation, that also moves us on target to student achievement.
Good. Nice talk. Anyone else want to add to that?
I would say holy crap, sorry, 1 second.
This one is more difficult to just...
I would say, so for norms, I would say value the past, but focus on the future. I personally believe this board and the district should be more engaged in the legislature to move that deadline, because if you really want to evaluate someone for a full year, you can't evaluate them a week after school got out, because you won't have all that data. I mean, no district gets their data all collected, even if from a small school district, until the beginning of July. So if that deadline could be moved where the legislature can recognize that, that will allow us to set goals more effectively, because if the strategic plan has to be set on that, we have to adjust it, and we can. But I think that's something we as a board and district have to do to encourage the legislature to move that deadline.
And it's really it's a sticky wicket, because what the legislature is trying to do is to give superintendents a fair shot about, you know what, if your board's not happy with you, they shouldn't tell you way back there. They should tell you along the way. I think you're happy with your superintendent. I'm happy with your superintendent. But I think that's the reason that they push them forward. But you make a very good point. You can't have complete data at that point, especially at the end of the first year. So maybe as you set it forward, you might not want to move it too far back, because then superintendents are left kind of dangling there.
Correct.
Okay.
I might have
Yes.
a few words, okay?
Okay.
So working to seek to understand decisions being made, those are like just part of the job that she has. And so sometimes the decisions that will be made, one of our former board members used to say, we're getting into the weeds and we don't need to be there. So you just let that person do the job that we hired them to do. Then again, there's the uniqueness of sub-districts and the management of the whole unique sub-district that we have with the different populations, the different languages that are in our district, being able to manipulate those and make sure that every child is getting what they need. I think it's also very important that we monitor our own personal biases on the relationship you may have with Dr. Logan or the relationship you don't have with her. If you like the job or you like her as a person, you got to take those things out and say, are we getting what we wanted when we selected a superintendent? There we
That
go.
was well done. Really. Well done. Got a way with words there. Okay, when we come back, we are going to spend a little bit of time
He never talks,
brainstorming
so this is good.
possible board goals for 2019-20. We are not making decisions. We are not making policy. We're just going to brainstorm and then talk about what happens next. So about 10 minutes, we'll be back here. Okay, I'm going to bring us back together 1 minute early. Matt added up what you decided, how you gave your snapshot of strengths and the areas of need. And I will put this in my notes that I send back. But one of the things that jumps out at me is that the things that were areas of strength in May, for the most part, are still areas of strength. And the things that were areas of need in May of 2018 are still areas of need, with a few exceptions. Your highest point of all of them, realizing that we left out the first one, had to do with number 2. The board considers recommendations from the superintendent and administrators. You thought that was pretty high. The next highest was the last one, which doesn't really mesh with what our conversation just was. Superintendent contract renewal and deadlines process are clear, and the board and the superintendent honor the process and dates. The next highest was board ensures policies are accessible to the public. If you go down under the area of needs, the areas in which you say there's the most need are, first of all, the first one, board continually monitors district plan and progress of goals. That may be connected with the fact that you're just about to set that into, you're going to develop that, so that may not be a valid number. The next two that are very close to that, 2.8, was the third one, board adopted policy to require rigorous evaluation of curriculum on a regular basis. And the one after that, at the end of the legislative session, board analyzes work and effectiveness of district's advocacy role during the session. Whether or not you think those are the very most important things board should be doing, I don't know, but that's what the Nebraska State Board, School Board Association says we should be doing. So that's kind of important as we move forward to setting board goals. And I'm walking a little bit on ice here. I don't know how thick it is, because I'm not sure what you've done in the past for board goals. We're not talking about goals for the strategic plan. We're talking about what are your goals. What do you think should be board goals for this school year, right? So I want you to think about it for a very few minutes, like 3 or 4. Make some notes to yourself, and then I'm going to make a list of things that you suggest. And I think Dr. Logan is going to listen to these suggestions as she talks about what would be her goals for the coming school year. So choose carefully. What should your board goals be for the Omaha Public Schools Board? You're just going to think first, about 3 or 4 minutes. Have a clarifying question? No. Okay. Okay, it might not be as much fun to talk about board goals as it is to talk about moving a barn, but you've taken a few minutes to talk about what could be board goals for this board to do this school year. And I am going to write them down. These are ideas, these are not your board goals. These are your ideas for board goals. So, Nancy.
It's so hard to get it. I mean, they have jobs too. So even though they are the parent, they have a couple of jobs maybe, and it's difficult for them. So I don't know the answer to that one.
Okay. What other thoughts about board goals might you have?
That's one of the things I wrote as well, was work to better engage families in the success of their students. Provide supports to other sub-districts outside of our own. Provide our students with as many educational opportunities as possible between kindergarten and 12th grade.
Okay, I can't go that fast.
I know.
What was the second one?
Provide supports to other sub-districts outside of our own.
Tell me what that means.
So if it's going and visiting a school, meeting with different principals to see what they're doing in their buildings that might be working, and it may work for other districts or our own sub-districts, we might want to share some of those ideas and some of the innovative things that may be going on in classrooms, if it's STEM or curriculum, how things are being taught. And we see something that might work for our other schools, we could share that information. So along with Nancy, I said work to better engage our families in the success of their students.
Okay, and what was your third one?
Provide our students with as many educational opportunities as possible between kindergarten and 12th grade. So it's math competitions and science labs and STEM stuff, and if it's one-on-one with computers and those kind of things, whatever we can do to get our kids prepared for college and careers, that's what we say we do. And I had one more.
I'll let you give it.
Complete the superintendent evaluation.
And I thought Ricky said something interesting about you might see something in your sub-district to share with us, and that would be good for the board to share what we see in our sub-districts that we think is pretty good, because we've never done that like that. I mean, you're either on your own, you've gone out there and seen it, or maybe sometimes it's been reported to the board. But having a board member do that and see that and everyone be involved in going to the schools they represent, I think that's extremely important.
So let me remind you, we're not talking about activities that you can do, but goals for the school year.
Yeah, but we get a goal out of our association.
Yes. Yes.
Just a correction, we didn't have a week to do the superintendent evaluations. We have 4 days. So if you're going to tell someone to do their job, we can keep having this conversation. Because one goal that I'll have for the board is to do their job. Because I come to every board meeting fully prepared, ready to ask questions. So that should be a goal and a priority for the board for next year.
Still going to say that regardless of the timeline, being held accountable to making sure that we get the work done.
And there was that one part that said that we needed
now
to.
let me get somebody else have another turn, okay? I want to get everybody's voice at the table.
That other part.
You want me to give- okay, I'll give Shavana's also, so I'll go a
Okay.
couple. I gave mine kind of broad. I just said to develop a clear strategic plan for the district that aligns with the needs of our students with regard to basically our motto, preparing students. I mean, I just kind of kept it, develop that strategic plan. That's on our agenda this year for sure.
Okay.
And then I said, I don't know if this is one, but I said, ensure all aspects of our 2018 bond progress with regard to budget, timeline, and what was promised to our voters. I know we're going to have several groundbreakings. Things are starting to progress with our bond work, so keeping our bond work aligned with what we promised voters. And then I just said, continue to offer complete transparency on all topics that we provide and talk about at the board table to our public, staff, and all of our community. Those were mine. Now I'll go on to Ms.
Wait a
Dr.
minute.
Oh, okay. And then I'll read Dr. Holman's. Dr. Holman.
Sean wants to be called Dr. Holman.
Obviously, you figured out that the color doesn't really matter. I'm just every once in a while changing. So go ahead.
Okay. Her first one is attending and participating in NSB events and PD activities, I take it. Give you a chance to write. Oh, I like this next one. Okay, her second one is for board members to actively participate on all committees. That's a good one.
Yeah. Instead of just the one you want, because I think you need to know the whole picture.
I couldn't read your handwriting for a minute. I got it. Okay, and her third one is accountability for oneself and each other. What it is, what it looks like, what does it mean? Very good.
Remember the movie Last Dragon? It's like, what it is. Something like that.
Somebody else. Mark.
I'll just give, some of those have already been answered, but I'll, mine is the adoption of the strategic plan and really being committed to that process that we start on, so we're not at the finish line and decide to change the rules of the game. And then the other one is just to, a goal for the board is to, and this is kind of like that committee piece, is the legislative process and being, setting our agenda and goals that we want to accomplish in Lincoln over the next session. And in my opinion, I think we should look more of a multi-step. I know the superintendent has the coalition, but it's getting to the point where they're going to start requesting, we're going to have to actually act on some of those ideas that they're going to be coming up as a board, and how aggressive can we be in Lincoln? I wouldn't say aggressive, but active, to make sure that we can keep that ball rolling up the hill.
There are a couple of things I want to talk about, but I don't know how to interject. My extreme issue with communication skills and language usage out in the community, what we hear, what we see, what's on TV anymore. It's getting so brought down to a level of not good. And I think we've been needing to do that for a long time, and our test scores show that. Yeah.
So tell me what you mean so I get it up there.
The
right.
language usage that we are teaching our children or not teaching them in the classroom, some of the things we need to be doing for their communication skills as they go out into the world. And when I see them and pay my bills and things, I ask them always what school they went to because of how they were speaking. And I said this before, I've been lucky they haven't been OPS when they're misusing things. However, that doesn't mean that they don't do that. I just really want us to get into that because it's been going by the wayside. I don't know how we're going to do that, but I really want us to do better in that area.
I think maybe one way to phrase that would be to model appropriate language and communication.
Okay.
Is that kind of what you're saying, is that as board members that we should be modeling behavior and communication?
Not just us, but I
Right,
want
but-
that to be the whole district in the classrooms.
But these are board goals, not district goals.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
just
So
bringing it.
How to get down to that level, I really, I mean, our textbooks don't even have enough of that. There's no wonder. Yeah. If you look at them, they're nil.
Did you have another one you wanted up there?
I think that's a really big one for me.
Anyone else? Ben? Dr. Logan, does that give you a starting point? Increase family participation. There were two that stated something similar to that. Share, provide supports to other schools, to and from other schools. I think that's both within OPS and maybe outside of OPS, or is this just inside? In district. In district.
Oh, I know what I was going to say. You just said it. The thing that we have not won a board award except one time many years ago. And when you go to these functions and they go up there, they want an award. They want an award. There we sit. 2 or 3 of us or 4 of us are there. I would love to see us participate to the point that we could get a board award coming up. That's a good idea.
I actually thought of something.
Oh. Okay. Somebody said I thought of something. I didn't hear.
I thought of something. I
Okay.
think it would be helpful if the board had more information about the goings-on in the district. I think the district does a fair job of, in general, publicizing things that are going on in the district. But I remember I asked Mr. Ray about a year ago if we could get maybe a weekly update of kind of the high points of things that are going on in the district, this week, next couple weeks, so the board, can throw some of these things on their calendar. I think it's important for the board to know some of the highlights of things that are going on in the district, and maybe a more structured way of doing that.
Does that make sense? More than a listing.
Okay. Provide students with as many educational opportunities as possible. You're all going to wordsmith this. It's going to sound much more polished. Complete superintendent evaluation. Come to meetings prepared to work. Develop a clear strategic plan. Ensure progression of the 2018 bond. Keep our promises. Ensure complete transparency on all topics. Attend and participate in NASB activities. That's where you could do your looking at going after board awards. Actively participate in all committees. Define and practice accountability for self and board as a whole. Adopt and commit, not committee. You can tell I go to too many meetings. Adopt and commit to the strategic plan. Establish goals to legislature. Establish and communicate goals to the legislature. Consider participation in a board award competition. Assess how we teach language skills to students. Model appropriate language and behavior. Develop ways to increase board information about things going on. You do not want to pick all of those goals for 1 year. You may want to work on them kind of quietly, but you're going to want to narrow that down. And how you're going to do that is really none of my business, but I'm going to ask Dr. Logan to talk about, so what are next steps for board development, for finalizing these goals, et cetera. And then I get to come back for the last part.
Planning timeline, and then talk about what my proposed goals are for this school year. It was helpful for me to be able to see this. I'll be submitting these to Mark and Shavana tomorrow, probably by the end of the day, or maybe early in the morning. So in April, I presented the strategic plan timeline. That was the first time that the strategic plan partners came in and met with me, David, Dr. Trautenberg, and Dr. Ray. And do you want to? Basically, we started with research and where are we? You can go to the next one. We started with research and budget review, which are leading into this school year to prepare a budget for consideration by the board on September the 5th, 6th? 5th. It's the 5th? Next Wednesday, the 6th, I believe. Is that the 6th or the 5th? It's the 5th. I can't remember. 4th. Sorry. It's September 4th. Sorry. When on the board meeting. And so that budget includes increases in compensation for our most of our employees that have already bargained, where we have settled. We have a few ongoing negotiations, includes increases in compensation, and also reduces the budget by $10 million and increases the fund balance to about 18.5%. These things were foundational for us to start a strategic plan, and also we moved on the recommendation of our strategic plan partners to align with our budget cycle. Often, school districts will create a strategic plan. It's not aligned with their budget cycle, so they have things in their strategic plan. They can't do them for 6 to 9 months because they aren't aligned with their budget cycle. So some of that was that was done on purpose. Start and develop the data connections, and then strategic plan. Solidification, and then launch in January of 2020. Right now, we are starting the collection phase of data, which starts September the 10th, where we will have our futures labs involving 80 of our constituents, 80 and 80, right? 80 in the 40 and 40, a total of 80. Many of you, some of you were able to submit names and or are planning on participating in the futures labs yourself. Once we receive that feedback from our strategic plan partners, we will bring that information to the Board of Education for your consideration and your feedback. And then the next iterative process will start on October the 10th, I think I have that right, where the strategic plan partners will come back. We'll have another futures lab, and then you will get additional information. At the same time that is happening, the folks in curriculum instruction are also working on their pieces of the plan. They are reviewing data for our magnet school programs. They are reviewing data from all of our high school programs, and we'll make recommendations that will flow up in to the strategic plan. And then there's some other things on the timeline there, but you don't need me to read them to you. We modeled these on 3 things. One, we need to have financial accountability and sustainability first, because it won't matter what we plan if we can't do it because we don't have funds. We need a highly qualified and effective staff, which will feed up into our strategic plan through retention strategies and how we think about not just maintaining staff, but continue to grow our workforce. We have about half of our principals eligible to retire. Many of our staff eligible to retire who have 35 plus years, and so we have to be prepared for those people to transition to their next phase and to have replacements. And then at the top of that is our educational programming, because that's the apex of what we do. On the outside of those, obviously, sustainability is important, evidence-based, and outcome-driven. So any programs that we propose, we have to be able to sustain based on the resources that we have available. Also, when you receive the budget, you will also receive a 5-year projection as well as you did last year. There are 3 proposed goals, and I welcome any feedback around these goals. These will change. These will just be presented as a part of the Futures Lab, but they could change as a result of the Futures Labs, which are stakeholder groups. It's a fancy word for that. And you can see that the first one really reflects our vision and mission, every student, every day prepared for success, and the things that feed up into that. Early literacy, I anticipate that there will be quite a great attention paid to early literacy in our 5-year strategic plan, college preparation, instructional resources, which we're actually already making an investment. So although we did not do our formal plan, the building blocks have been put in there with the adoption of our K through 5 curriculum that will happen, which is happening now because we're in pilots around the district. And then, as you can see, Goal 2 and Goal 3, Goal 3 being financial sustainability and desirable programmatic offers that keeps our district growing. And so my 5 proposed goals are: 1, strategic planning, alignment of resources to strategic plan. So it's not just creating the strategic plan, but looking at all of our budgets, our title budget, our ESU budget, our general fund, to make sure that those all of the funds that we have aligned to our strategic plan. Second is in math, increasing the number of students that are meeting expectations that determined by MAP, and decreasing the number of students who are making backwards progress. So looking at it 2 ways, actually, I think raising the bar, not just looking for an increase in one, but also looking for a decrease in our lowest performing students, an increase in the percentage of students who are attending at 95% or higher, helping our schools work first with students they can easily move. Those are students who are in 93, 94. They really only need to attend one more day to get over in that next basket, the 95%, and then decreasing the number of students who are below 80%. A decrease in office referrals and the disparity in the number of office referrals in the top quartile of our schools. So the top really means the bottom in this case. So the schools that have the highest, the top 25% who have the highest degree of discrepancy, focusing on those first because they account for more than 30% of office referrals, even though they're only 25% of schools. And then advocacy as the 5th goal, and the role of the school district in working to ameliorate the issues around our pension and the impact of that on our school budget. So those are the 5 things. Usually you would have 3 to 5. And I see many tactical things that are on there that once I submit them to you, maybe things that you want me to include. I would like to stay in the 5 range because that makes sense and is doable. When you get past 5, you're getting into kind of something that probably is not. You can't concentrate on 5 things. It's just very difficult. Some of the tactical things I think are just things that I just see as part of my job. Making sure the bond is implemented, which is one of the things that you brought up and we talk about often. Positioning us to build our 5 schools and 1 school that has a community partner attached, and curriculum adoption, those kinds of things. They are big things, but they seem like those are just the things that I do every day and don't necessarily need to be put into goals because they're just, to me, fundamental building blocks of me doing my job every day. And I did not include some of the things that I included last year, which were communications for the Board of Education, because I feel like I'm at a really good point with those. So if those are things that you want me to continue. I'm going to continue the things that I'm doing. I think we added this year the board calls on that Friday before the meetings, but also the one-on-ones and the weekly updates that you receive. So those are kind of where I am, and I'd love to. If you have questions about that, because again, I'll submit them to Mark and Shavana for their feedback first, and then they will forward them on to the board after I make any changes. And then the last thing was to talk about the board, where we would want to go with the board goals. I think we have a board leadership meeting on Wednesday. I think it's an in-person on Wednesday. My suggestion would be, and Mr. Snow, however you would like to think about this, would be to look at them there. We could create some, I think maybe mapping them to the key roles of boards might be helpful, because there's some tactical stuff that administration does, I think, on the list. Could be helpful, and then submitting them to the board for however many, 3 to 5, or however the board wants to think about how many goals they would like to have.
One of the things I think that you're doing that's very good is letting us have the opportunity to get back to me if you have any questions. And I would do that anyway, but you put it out there, and that's good, because then that opens it up. So, if you don't like something on the agenda, do it ahead of time. And I even have been in a situation where it's removed if there wasn't sufficient information. And that doesn't mean you. It just means long-standing stuff.
I have to give Dr. Height credit for that. If there was not sufficient information on my previous district, things would be removed. We want to make sure that the board has the information that they need. So it's just been a practice that I was able to observe. So hopefully it's helpful. And if there are things that we need to follow up, for example, last time there were some questions about, was that last time or 2 times ago, with the high school models. So at this board meeting, you will see the 3D models of both high schools. They're going to come into a presentation where you'll be able to see 3D renderings of all 3 high schools. I think all 3. We're building 2. Sorry, that's a slip at 8:44. The 2 high schools, and you'll be able to see them in 3D. I think you'll be very pleased. You'll be able to see some of what the 4 board members who accompanied us to Kansas. You'll be able to see some of the input, a lot of the input, quite frankly, that you put into those. They are really remarkable buildings, so I'm very excited for you to be able to see those next board meeting. It's the board meeting on the 19th.
Dr. Logan, for the future labs, I know you wanted 2 people selected from each sub-district. Do you know if you received all those from everybody on the board? When's the deadline, Mr. Ray?
A couple weeks ago, but you can get them to me tomorrow. I'm doing invites tomorrow.
Okay.
Did we get clarification on what you're looking for?
Yep.
He did send that out.
Okay, I might have missed that. I need to.
I can forward it to you.
That's okay. We can forward it to you again.
Oh. Well, I don't have to do it.
I didn't get it. I might have missed it. But that's what I was. I don't know
Yeah,
what you were.
it came at the request of Mr. Coleman.
Yes, I did see that. It's the actual outcome. Because I was like.
Okay, so I don't know exactly where you're going to go with board goals, which is somewhat different than district goals. If you do set board goals, echo, don't set too many, and remind yourself what they are. No matter how many of these that you pick, every once in a while I do. Yeah. Right.
So you've done some things already that put you in a good spot. You set some norms for yourself. Tonight you came back. I know you've done it over the course. You've looked at those norms. Tonight you came back and you looked at the norms. You did a survey in May of 20. I just forgot to turn it back on. I'm sorry. In May of 2018, you took a survey about how well we're doing. Tonight, you visited that. You're going to get that kind of data. If you look at that data, what you can do is share with, if you go for board awards, it reaffirms for you, I'm doing the right thing, we're doing the right thing. And the recognition, if you get the recognition, reminds you this is the right thing we should be doing. This is how we should be operating. And that makes you a better board. So it's great. Rewards are great if they help change your behavior, not for the reward itself. But the last thing are some thoughts from you. So what I would love to hear is, as we finish tonight, a little bit early, what are your thoughts about things that you talked about tonight, reflections, norms, the key work of boards, etc., that you'd like to share as we conclude?
I would go first. I would like to thank everybody for coming out today for this retreat. I know it's very hard, and I know this is a rescheduled one, but I really do believe the more we have these, the better we get as a board. I know sometimes the discussions are hard, but they're needed. Trust me, they're needed, because there once was a time that we never had these discussions, and they were played out at the board table. So, kudos and thank you.
Okay, I'm ready for another one. Any other thoughts?
I think they're nervous.
They're nervous. It is late.
I just think getting to hear what other people are thinking and noting that some of them are talking that haven't been very vocal before where I have been around. And so I really like to have everybody's viewpoint and know what everybody is thinking. And in that way, we can help everybody achieve what they want to in their sub-districts as well, because we already know what they think they need there.
Anything else? I want to thank you for allowing me to be here as an outsider to take a peek as you have real conversations, as you discuss some things that you're proud of and some things that you say we need to do better at. That's the only way we get better, whether it's as a teacher, as a mom, as a superintendent, as a board member. So thank you for letting me eavesdrop. I won't have these for you by tomorrow morning, like you said, for yours. But I will get them to you, and I think as you read over, please feel free to make any changes, but it's just an outsider's view as I'm listening to you think about your job as working for the best of the children in Omaha Public Schools. Thank you for your service. Thank you. Thanks for being here. You're welcome.
Meeting's adjourned at 8:50. Thank you.